Guys, I'm on pause.
Here's a fun fact. Where does anybody know? I know. Does anybody know the state of Oklahoma, where the word Oklahoma came from, and what its meaning is?
Yes, from my tribe. I'll give someone else a chance, though.
I don't know much about American history because I live in Australia.
Unpaid Shill's tribe.
The language Homa means man and Okla means red. So Oklahoma, red man.
Very good.
Not anymore.
Yep.
Are you
And that's
sure
what
it isn't
my
named after the
located to.
musical?
There actually has been some scientific evidence showing that it could have been named after the musical.
But they're just
Oklahoma is
discarding the
actually-
fact that
oh.
this is where they put all of them, put all the Indians during the
Yeah.
shit show.
I mean,
Well-
my tribe was relocated to Oklahoma.
Yeah, and my grandmother was born in the Indian Territories, so for what it's worth, I
Same
don't
with my
take great
great-grandmother.
I don't take great offense at someone, especially from Europe, referring to natives as red Indians. That's just something that's been ingrained into the language and their culture. So it's the first thing that pops into their mind. So I get it, and it's not something that makes me, recoil and want to attack them or anything.
Really?
I don't know if that's
Which culture
quite
is
true.
that?
I know,
Surprise!
but I
I'm
correct-
from Europe. In which culture is it ingrained here to call Native Americans red Indians? You tell
Well,
me.
I've heard British
Just
use it.
call
I've
them
heard Germans
Indians.
use it.
I guess it depends on you, maybe on your generation, because when I grew up, that was a commonly used phrase.
Yeah,
me
I mean,
too.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
don't know what
you're-
you guys are
you're-
talking about.
in the scheme of things, compared to people like Jam, Ali, myself, you are a child. And that's no disrespect. We're just old.
I don't regard you as one.
Yeah, you're
Harley.
just very, very
You're
old.
ahead. You're ahead of your times, mate. You've got a lot of people can learn things off you. Older people can learn things off you. You can never stop learning, no matter what age.
But I know
don't-
now
don't
it's
disagree
Native
with that.
American, and I've known long enough for that to have become ingrained. And I did correct Anthony on it, in passing.
I mean,
said,
honestly,
I
it's
just
the
have a
sort of
question real
thing
quick.
that my
Unpaid-
mother would say, who's 92.
right.
Because that is what she grew up. That is what she learned growing up, and she's got to the age now where she says what she learned when she was growing up.
It went out with coloured people, I guess.
Yes.
Unpaid. I'm just curious. What kind of DNA testing did you do, and what's the percentage of your heritage?
What's the percentage? I'm over a half, but I can only prove a quarter. As far as DNA testing proves, I've been a member. My family's been members of the tribe going back thousands of years.
So
We were on the original rolls.
What's the nearest relative that you have met that you would say is like a really? I guess I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm just trying to understand. Like, do you have someone who's close to you still living that's, I guess, that has a higher percentage of DNA than you, or?
His mum or his dad, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. Back when my parents were children, it was, and my grandparents as well. It was a bad thing to be an Indian. So quite often they would say, "Oh no, I'm not full blood. I'm a half breed."
Okay, but my question to you was,
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So because of this, on the original Dawson rolls, my ancestor that's on the Dawson rolls is listed as half blood when actually he was full. Therefore, coming down to me, it turned me into a half, including a little bit from my mother's side. Most of the native comes down through my father's side, but on my mother's side, there's some Assiniboine Cree and a little bit of Blackfoot, and then on my father's side is Chickasaw.
okay, I'm sorry. So who was the 100%? Just curious, like
The
like your
100%.
grandfather or a? Yeah, you said that there was someone who was 100%.
Yeah, that would have been my grandmother. The one that was
just curious.
the one that was born in the Indian Territories, and then because it was God, I hesitate to use the term, but because it was watered down by the European blood coming down through my father's line, I got some also from my mother's line, so that bumped me back up just over a half, rather than the quarter that it would have been had my mother been purely European.
Wee.
So there you go.
My ancestry goes back a fair way.
Shows you got your nation's card.
Yeah, I've got my CDIB and I vote.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm 50% transient being. So
in Native American mythology, is the Earth flat?
I don't think they really care about that.
First off, it depends on what tribe you're talking, because there are very widely held beliefs by any number of tribes. But generally speaking, as far as what I know about various tribes, it wasn't something that was ever really discussed. It was considered that the Earth just went on and on and on. Now that could be interpreted as a flat plane, or it could be going orbits around a circular or a spherical object. But it was just the Earth went on.
Or it could have been a slippery
focused
slide.
on the spirit the most, on the spirit and the individuals and the animals. That's where they invested all their focus.
Yeah,
where
nature.
they tapped in their strength. Yes, but that's the animism part. It comes. It's not just the belief. There's more to it.
Have you looked into Mississippi culture?
The Mississippian?
Yeah, the Mississippian culture is fascinating to fuck 'em back. It really, really is. I mean, what we have a whole lot of surveys from 1872, and 5% of those monuments are left, and some of them are phenomenal. Absolutely.
Yeah, the mounds, the mound building cultures. My tribe actually migrated into that area after the collapse of the Mississippian culture, so I have no history with that.
Do you believe they could, your ancestors could manipulate nature? You know, we've got a thing here about rain dances or something. We got told us about films, but there's like it's like a hermetic kind of thing that you can actually, you know, change the vibration of your atmosphere. Do you think was it
folk dancing?
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking unpaid chills because I am interested in this actually but I'm just wondering, would there be history of them actually, you know, why did they actually have rain dances and stuff like that, or dances to invoke some weather or something like that? Did they actually possess them? Or
various tribes use dances and songs to what's the word I'm looking for? To invoke various phenomena.
I don't think
However,
Well,
that's great. You can think. That's great. You can think whatever you want. That's wonderful. Right. Anyway, but they were used to invoke various phenomena. However, having no scientific proof to it, it's simply a cultural thing rather than, you know, an actually functioning.
The Egyptians, a lot of Egyptians, and I'm sure Drussel thing.
Well, I just hang on, Ali. No, please, pardon me for just a moment. Okay. I gotta ask Admiral, what should a Native American sound like? Okay, go ahead, Ali.
All right, I was just wondering because there's history. There's history of all these different, you know, cultures. You know, like from Amazonian to the Indians to Druids to the Egyptians to Chaldeans. They all seem to have this seem to think they could believe or they could actually manipulate Mother Nature by changing vibration or making sound. You are very, you know, that kind of thing. You know,
I'll tell you what my ancestors used to do. You guys might think I'm white, but I'm not.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, they used to manipulate the weather by setting the bush on fire.
Mm. And if you go to the Altahama Desert, they used to use pictograms and diagrams to affect the weather.
Hey, unpaid, I have a question for you.
Yo.
Do you feel that the representation of the history of the Native American is accurately communicated in U.S. education system?
With the amount of information that has to be covered in your typical classroom environment through the school year and through the short years that we have to educate our kids before they become adults. I feel like it is fundamentally, the fundaments of it are, are pretty accurately represented as we understand them today. However, things are constantly changing because we learn new stuff constantly. So while, I'd like to see more, but I understand that it's just not something that can happen.
Joking, right? Unpaid shows. I was
I
joking about
didn't
you not
hear
being
that.
Native American. Yeah.
Admiral, you're really low, I think.
Oh yeah, let me put on my headphones. Let me mute for now.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing as well you say you're Indian nation, so you're part of 5 nations, or 6 nations in the end, I think, wasn't it?
The 5 civilized tribes, yeah.
Yeah, because that I have a view, and I know this is not my view. That thing I read, but I really like the thought that possibly is the oldest democratic society on earth that we know of.
Actually, I think the Iroquois were established as a multi-tribal nation. Were established long before the 5 civilized tribes came into the same area.
But it was the council. It was the council that seemed to be unique. The way that they actually handled the council between the 5 tribes.
Well, the 5 civilized tribes is based on, and God, I hate saying this, but it's the truth. Basically, the 5 biggest sellouts.
What are you talking about? Just because the Cherokee language and culture was so malleable doesn't mean the white man took over.
No, it's the ones that most quickly and readily adopted certain cultural aspects of the Europeans.
Mm. But they're also so they've had the longest contact with the Europeans.
Right. The Chickasaw Nation, my tribe, actually had contact with DeSoto in, I believe, 1542, and were amongst the first tribes to get pigs because they chased DeSoto back to the Gulf of Mexico and kept his pigs. So they were actually amongst the first to get pork in their diets.
Yeah,
so does that mean the wild boar problem in the US is down?
I was actually joking.
Manny,
Actually, can we just sort something out? Unpaid shill, are you really offended at what Admiral said? Because I think Admiral's trying to make an apology.
No, I was not offended.
I'm what the Americans call Mexican. So
okay. Well, see, I wasn't offended, but I've heard that so many.
If you want.
But I've heard that so many times. It's just gotten to the point where it's like
I don't get it.
I got a great quote.
Unless I get offended, then I will let you know.
No. If I'm offended, you'll know.
Yeah, I got a great quote. Hold on, great quote. Chavez E. Chavez from Young Guns. I'm a Mexican Indian, you son of a bitch.
Unpaid, it's John. I've got a scoot for a little while. I was just wondering if you've ever heard of a book called Glen Coe and the Indians by James Hunter.
Oh yes.
Doesn't ring a bell.
It's it's been many years since I read it, but it's basically it draws a parallel between the Highland princes and the sort of rounding up of Native Americans and being forced into situation.
Could you post that title in side chat? I'd love to take a look at this. I'm a bibliovore.
I've done it already.
Okay.
But it's from what I can remember, some of the Clan MacDonalds from Glencoe actually ended up fighting alongside the Native Americans, and were
I was jokingly actually going to ask, Unpaid Shill, was your watered down blood Scottish? Because I suspect it was.
The Colberts were a very huge influence in the Chickasaw tribe. The Colberts became the Scottish faction within our tribe.
I'm also part Sioux, man. I'm from the Oglala Nation of the Pine Indian Reservation.
Okay.
I'm one quarter Oglala. Lakota.
Well, you don't sound Oglala.
That's what's up.
But yeah, actually, in my tribe there is a large Scottish contingent, so there's that connection there as well. The Colberts basically took over the tribe. And this was back in the early 1800s.
Yeah, it's quite a. I need to read the book again just to get the gist of it, but I quite like the sound of Scott, homeland and joining other people in the same kind of situation.
Well, if I can shill something, I do want to shill this. Do read up on the Chickasaw Nation. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of the tribal history that we have. It's a very interesting read. The Chickasaw were known as the Spartans of the lower Mississippi. It was a very warrior-based culture. It was matrilineal. Basically, the women were the only ones allowed to vote, and the women owned everything, but the men were the only ones that could hold office. So it was a very interesting social setup, as well as military setup. So do read up on the Chickasaw Nation. It's very fascinating history.
Just before I go, something I found out quite recently. You know the Maasai in Kenya, the Maasai Mara, the Maasai tribe. Yep. There is a reason why the red shawls that they wear are tartan and very similar to McGregor tartan. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, guys, I've got to shoot. I might come back in a while.
Okay, later, John.
Unpaid shills.
Can we let Carlos have his word, please? Because he's been trying to get in for a while. Although.
Carlos, are you here? Go ahead. Carlos?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I wasn't trying to say. I was trying to say something earlier, but.
Hello? Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I'm interested in the whole how do past cultures seen the shape of the earth and how does it affect each person today?
Yeah, actually, I've used my heritage stories to bust the creationist myth of the flood out of the water. The Aboriginal communities in Australia state that, or due to uncovered paintings and whatnot, that there was a great, it was more of an inundation of water, not an actual flood. So it actually rose up about 120 feet and came inland, but it was 7,000 years ago. And it completely does not comport to the global flood myth of 4,400 years ago. And it's just interesting to hear that all the flood myth is, it created the Grand Canyon, or it did this in Europe, but they never talk about did it do anything in Africa or South America or Australia. And yeah, I did some digging into our flood myth, and it doesn't comport.
In fact, actually, it's quite interesting because the flood myths are much more. If you do actually a diagram of where flood myths come from, they are much, much, much more prevalent in the northern hemisphere than they are in the southern. And I actually think it's a remembrance. I actually think this goes back to a period around 11,500 years ago, where we see the breakup of the ice cap in North America. And while that was going on, we have really good climate data that says it was actually dry and quite warm in the southern hemisphere. There was actually drought at that time. And I think that's why we have... Yeah. Well, it's only a hypothesis.
Geological data too.
Well, if I recall correctly, that was around the time that there was the inundation of Doggerland, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, no, that's later. So Doggerland, we lose Doggerland around sort of 6,000, 7,000, but that's the last part of it. Again, you know, people think it just was like splosh, everything gone. What we find is we find a couple of big kind of increases in sea level and then a gentle rise. And you got to think that
I stand corrected then.
Yeah, parts of Doggerland are only like sort of 5-10 meters underwater. It's not deep water there. So Dogger Bank, for instance, that's about 5 meters underwater at regular sea.
Yeah, I mean, most of the North Sea is really shallow, 20 meters, 30 meters tops.
So it's not this deep. It gets a bit deeper than that. You get down to about sort of 100, 200 meters, but we don't have anything vastly deep. But again, that will comport to river valley structures that we see, and we actually can see the river formations and patterns from the ground penetrating radar that they've done and from the side sonar that they've done. And obviously we've dredged up shed loads of artifacts.
Shed loads.
Shed loads of artifacts. Yeah, trawlers keep bringing them up. It's really cool. So I find all that kind of cool. And to me, that makes more sense about why we have a proliferation of these stories from so many different cultures. But again, I don't think these are all necessarily from exactly the same time as well.
Or event.
Yeah, or event.
No.
So again, I think that's where we have, it seems to me one of the problems I have with a lot of the views like this, and I'm trying to be generous at the moment, is it seems people want, it's A or it's B, and everything must fit into either A or B. And what I tend to find in reality is actually it's never that simple. What we have is kind of, this is where the indications are, but we have all this scattering stuff out to the sides that is kind of not agreeing with the core set of data. Or we have to account for more variables or more things. And yeah, I just think that, and again, I'm sorry, this is why I have a problem with the flat Earth, because I think it's just people looking for a really simplistic answers to some very complicated questions. Space is too complex. Let's make a dome and pretend it isn't there. Is kind of how I feel a lot of the times.
Yeah, that's a bit of an overgeneralization, so that disqualifies your statement as it requires.
I said this is how I feel. I'm not saying that it's a point of truth, Travis. Stop being a dick.
I'm not being a dick. I'm just trying to say your wave hand dismissal of why they assert. And notice I'm saying why they. Why
in general,
is,
yeah, I didn't say everybody. I wasn't all inclusive. I didn't say that was the consensus. But
still, it has.
But I find a lot like, I mean, you go and speak to people like Dale. You go and speak to people like, what's that guy? H guy that does 24/7. Him. You go and speak to lots of them. I suppose chemo is, I think, a fake, but he kind of goes down that route. Most of this is based on not an evidential position, but they're trying to make the evidence fit their religion.
Well, then you've also got these groups of people. For example, I want to say somewhere in the far back mountains of Iraq or Iran, somewhere around there, that have a continuous history in this one area and a calendar going back for 12,000 years.
I know these people as well. Oh, for fudge's sake. Oh! Yes, I know who you mean.
It starts with a Y. It's like Yaza something.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
It's Yazizi.
It's just tickling the back of my brain somewhere.
I think Yazizi.
The Yazidi people, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have a calendar going back like 12 or 13,000 years, and an established history in that area for 13,000 years.
Yeah, but I mean, if that goes in front of a young Earth creationist, they're going to say, well, they're wrong because the Bible
didn't do it.
Yeah,
because of the book.
Hold on, let me jump in just real quick, and let me make a qualification that I'm no longer a Christian. Okay, so I'm just going to speak as one who came from that culture. It's not an argument to say that they base their beliefs on a book. Okay, like that's such a loaded comment that it's.
But creationists do.
Okay, no, but that's not the point, because listen, hold on. What is the 12,000-year-old history based on?
It's a calendar. It's not a history. They don't have written. They don't have written history going back that far. Nobody does.
So what does the calendar?
There are continuous line of artifacts.
You're missing the point of my question. Where is the calendar?
Inscriptions generally. But yeah, you're right. It's writing. It's another form of writing.
Inscriptions. Okay, thank you.
However you want to- yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
with
I mean-
those inscriptions goes along with the artifacts that you find that coincide with those scriptures, and that's part of the archaeological.
That's fine. That's a fine additional piece of information, Sean. But that wasn't the comment that was made. It was a snarky comment that they believe in a book.
Well, they do. I mean, some Christians
we
do.
were talking about creationists, right?
Yeah, I was talking
They
about
believe in Genesis.
They believe in
That's
the
still-
believe
yeah,
in the
but your-
literal.
your
They
point-
believe in the literal definition of what is in the Bible. The only place they get their religion from is from the Bible. Hence, sola scriptura.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I ask a clarification? Clarification question, please.
And the rest they have is faith. But yes, they get their religion from their Bible. They get their beliefs from the Bible.
Clarification question, please. Are those calendars that are inscribed, are those literal or are they symbolic?
I'd have to go and look it up. I'm not an expert on the Yazidi, so I don't know.
Okay, but you get my point. Listen, we can't.
No,
you
you're
guys
just trying. You're
can't
just trying to
simply-
basically reduce down all evidence to being equal. Therefore, nobody's any better than anybody else. Therefore, I can hold this
That's
point
right.
of view
That's
without
right.
being
That's
reasonable.
right.
And that is a totally fallacious, because what we have to support the hypothesis, the theory, and the facts of the sphere that is this Earth is a huge amount of evidence that you don't have. So you don't have
that is
equivalent.
incorrect.
What
That is
you have
incorrect.
is minor levels of observation
No.
which you draw a conclusion from.
No, that is exactly what you have. It's all based on
It's a
interpretation.
false equivalency.
It's not a false
It is
equivalency.
definitely a
You
false
have
equivalency.
you have an interpretation of the facts, and I have an interpretation
No,
of the
no.
facts.
What you have is the effectiveness of a flyer advertising a jumble sale on Saturday, and what we have is the Encyclopedia Britannica with a full index.
Written records, huh? Yeah, that's great rhetoric. Let's have those demonstrations instead of the rhetoric.
Sure, fine. Okay, can you actually calculate for me how much energy it will take to get something 35,000 feet up in the air, please, so I can understand, based on a weight of 12 kilos, how much fuel I'm going to need to supply for that?
I'm sorry, can you please help me understand how this has anything to do with proving the shape of the Earth?
Because if you understand the Earth, then you understand the metrics that support it. Therefore, you have a model that can predict things to help you design stuff. That's what I have.
That's great rhetoric. Awesome.
It's not rhetoric.
Okay, the plain truth. Measure the distance to the sun.
You can't measure the distance to the sun.
Why not?
Wait. I'd like you to actually prove that you can't measure the distance to the sun.
I can't prove a negative. Proving the distance to the sun, you would need to know its size and its distance, and you don't have either of that information.
Well, why don't you measure it?
You can't without those two factors.
How do you measure the distance to the sun using the transit of Venus?
You can't.
But you can.
In your world.
Seem to be able to get satellites.
We're living in a different world. Oh, sorry, Gross, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we seem to be able to get satellites to orbit Venus quite happily and drop payloads onto it. So we definitely know where it is and how to get there. We also have, direct observation of the sun through satellite observation as well. We know how far Venus is away. We know how big Venus is. We've got great video of Venus.
I want to say something.
So what I want you to do, if you say no, we don't, then prove it's fake. Don't say no, we don't. Say I don't believe in that information. Don't say no, you don't, because we do, and I'm fed up.
Don't.
Feel free to prove Kepler's laws of planetary motion incorrect.
Planetary what?
Hang on. Did
You
he
even
say
know
that
what
you
Kepler's
need to
laws
know the
are?
size of the object?
Travis, it's at times that you get like this that you've ceased to be useful, and you might as well just leave if you're just going to say what at everything.
Yeah, I don't.
Exactly.
I don't
Well,
address.
that's the answer to somebody who has no other argument and just realized they got crushed.
No, you didn't
Hello?
crush me. I don't deal
Hello.
with planetary motions
Definitely,
or orbits
I don't
or
Hey,
things
hang
that I
on,
can't
guys.
prove.
Carlos wants to say something, and he's not very loud tonight. Go ahead,
How
Carlos.
about now? Is it better?
Okay.
You're
Now,
roboting a bit as
the
well.
truth,
I got a
now-
robot. I got a robot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Carlos. You're
Yes.
actually roboting really bad. Well, the thing is that we have radar ranged Venus. We know how far away it is. Or how far away it was in the point on its orbit that it was at in relation to the point in our orbit that we were at. I appreciate that it does change regularly. You know, it is constantly. The distance between us is a constantly changing thing. But we are able to radar range Venus without any problems. And we're pretty sure that radar works because radar works.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
really
disagree
does.
that radar. I don't disagree that radar works, gentlemen. I've made this claim many times that my arguments are based on what my understanding of water is and the stationary nature of the Earth. That's where I argue from. I don't go to space.
Well, then you're arguing from ignorance.
Hey, unpaid shows. You said you're Native American. Did your ancestors know they lived on a rotating oblate spheroid?
We've already covered that.
answered
We're
that
on
question.
to
Yeah,
we're
that
on
doesn't
to another
matter.
topic now.
Okay, I missed it then because I've been multitasking. Go ahead.
That's cool. We're on to something else entirely. So go ahead,
Yeah,
guys.
I missed it. Been multitasking. My bad.
Be like saying, "Oh, the first ever people to invent religion were animists. Therefore, all religion must be animism instead." It's a nonsense question.
Semantic says a guy named Semantic Toy Soldier.
That's not that's not an argument of semantics.
Semantic Toy Soldier. Okay.
Do you know why it's
Carlos
called
had a
semantic toy
question.
soldier?
Why?
Carlos had a question here. He wanted to know if the plain truth said you needed to find the distance to the sun. Do you need the size and the distance? Yes, he did. Please ask him to clarify that. Why do you need to know the size of the sun to know how far away it is?
I don't believe that you can tell the distance to anything unless you know the size, so that you can compare what you think you know.
He didn't ask what you didn't believe.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I'm trying to express what my answer would be. Okay. If you cannot verify what you think a thing is or how big it is without getting there, you can't say therefore anything about that. So therefore, I don't know the distance to the sun. I don't know the size of the sun because I can't verify what my guess would be.
Are you saying that in order to figure out what the sun is, you have to personally go there and set foot on the surface? Maybe take a sample or a core drilling?
I can't make a claim about something that I can't verify.
But it's there.
And I have a question for you. In the backyard, I have a flagpole that has a small ball on the top of it. If I measure out the distance between a 45-degree angle and the base of that flagpole, can I tell how high that flagpole ball is? Or do I need to know the size of the ball?
Can you verify?
What's the proper name for
Can you
that ball?
verify your measurement, Bob?
Yes, I can clearly verify the measurement from the base of the flagpole to where I check the 45-degree angle, and I can verify it.
That's a false
45-degree
statement,
angle.
Bob, because it's not a ball on top of your flagpole. There's a specific term used for that, not a ball.
So then what would you like to call it?
What it's normally called.
Truck. And no, it's normally called Maxwell's left nut.
By the way, Maxwell, that
You're
was a
being
good one.
pedantic, Maxwell.
Maxwell, you win the Flurf Award of the day.
I posted in both side chat and YouTube chat a video describing how we can measure the distance to the sun using Venus. So it's there if anybody wants to look.
Yeah, Bob, how would you verify your measurement?
With trigonometry.
Okay, that's a non-answer. How did you get your measurement then? How did you get
Why is that a non-answer?
Okay, I'm asking a different question. How did you get your answer? Trigonometry?
Yes, you can do trigonometry. You know, there's another way that you can do it.
No,
Why
no,
don't you
no,
go ahead
hold
and tell
on.
me the
Hold
other
on.
way that you can
Listen,
do it?
I'm not trying to gotcha, okay? I'm trying to have a conversation, okay?
Well, do you understand trigonometry, and you
Okay.
understand that if it's 45 degrees, the two legs are equal at the right angle, right?
Okay, that doesn't tell you how long the flagpole is.
Yes, it does.
How?
Because
Trigonometry.
both lengths are the same size.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, thanks.
I hope
All
somebody's
right.
recording
Now,
this.
there's another way that you can do it. There's
No,
another
no.
way that you can do it
No,
if you
no.
want to try
Okay,
and
hold on,
verify
hold
it
on,
in a
hold
different
on.
way, and that is
Somebody
that you
else made a comment.
stop
that was
talking.
more
I'm
Yeah, but
teaching you something.
You're not teaching me anything because you said trigonometry. The other guy said the answer. What's the answer?
Now, the other way that you can do it is you can
No,
take
I'm
a
not talking to you
45-degree
any longer,
angle
Bob.
at the same
I'm not
spot,
talking to you any longer,
turn it
Bob.
on the side,
7:15.
and you can measure the distance
I'm
where
not
it goes.
talking to you anymore.
I'm not talking to anyone. I'm
plain
being
truth.
childish.
That's when you have your butt handed
So-
to you playing.
So
you
now
have
you
to
guys
start
are talking
saying
about the
things.
transit of Venus, and that's how you can measure the distance of the sun. It sounds like you guys are presupposing something. Do we have to presuppose something?
Manny, you presuppose everything. You presuppose a lot of things today. Presuppositions occur.
Wait, Manny,
that's-
what do you think the
That's the
presupposition?
thing. That's the thing. You got to
Manny,
think
how is it,
ahead.
Manny? Do you presuppose that a meter is the length of a meter?
You have to think ahead.
Let's go.
Why don't you go ahead and
You
tell me
presuppose
It's not
that your
good to be
measurements are accurate.
presupposing, because when you presuppose, you can get a group of morons on a round table that have lots of money and they can make presuppositions ahead of time that
Manny,
sound real.
Tell me what
Manny.
the word presuppose means.
The dictionary, I can tell you what the dictionary says it means.
Tell me what it means.
An action, process, or argument required as a precondition of possibility or coherence.
It also says without a basis in fact, correct? Or without a basis in evidence. Does it not say that? You make an assertion without a basis in evidence. That's a presupposition.
Somebody removed me from the call. I don't know.
Nobody
Nobody
removed
can
you from
left.
the call because nobody
No,
can.
it said somebody removed me from the
It,
call.
Manny,
Oh, you're
Manny,
incorrect.
we've been
So
having
basically,
problems.
what I was saying,
Everything went quiet for me for a second there.
We've been having
That's all
problems with meets dropping people out and it's saying they were ejected. You cannot have been ejected because the only person who can eject you is Jose, and Jose is not here.
Oh, okay. Well, it said,
Okay,
it
a
said somebody removed me
presupposition
from the
means that
call.
you make an assertion without a basis in evidence.
But
All
I'm
right.
saying is,
So saying the earth is a sphere is not a
what I'm saying
presupposition.
is, Bob.
That's
listen,
not true.
What I'm saying is, you're making presuppositions when you're saying the fucking sun is 93 million miles away because you're saying that Venus, the transit of Venus,
That's not a presupposition.
that's how you measure the distance to the sun. So how far is Venus? You're making that presupposition already. You already know how far is Venus?
We measured it with radar.
See?
Yeah, we do have actual
that's where the
measurements.
problem
It's
is
not a
at.
presupposition in any way, shape,
That's
or
where the
form.
problem is at. You cannot
Yes.
measure something with radar.
Yes,
Why
you
not?
really?
You
Well,
just
that's
can't.
what
You
it
just
is.
can't.
It's done every day.
That is radar's function.
Go ahead and explain it.
What does radar mean?
Go ahead and explain it then.
Manny,
Okay.
just look up
I don't
what
think that we should waste time
Alan,
trying to explain
Alan.
Why
what
is there
radar
such
is.
a thing,
Manny,
Daisy?
look up what the radar is an acronym. Look up what
how
an
do Bob
acronym means.
find
An
out?
acronym means basically it's a word made up of other words.
Why is
Go
there?
ahead. Go ahead. All right.
Radio range
That's your
detection.
belief. That's your belief. That's fine. All right. Well, that's the
I
problem.
didn't know that I was.
You guys
Hold
have
on.
too
You don't
many
even know the difference
presuppositions.
between evidence, data, and belief, do you?
Hold on, Bob. Hold on, Bob.
Bob,
let me
you're
hop in here
incorrect.
for a second. Hold on. You do know that Alan used to work on radar, right?
The whole 9 years in the Royal Air Force.
Who's
as
Alan?
a radar
Oh,
technician.
Alan.
The host,
Yeah, the host.
myself.
Yeah, there's a few
Alan,
other
what
Alans.
did you measure with radar? What did you measure with radar, Alan?
I measured the location of aircraft.
Okay. Did you measure the size? Did you measure the size of those aircraft?
No, well, actually, a trained operator could tell whether it was a large aircraft or a small aircraft.
Just asking
I
you,
was,
Alan.
hang on,
Just asking you.
yeah, I was not a trained operator. I was a technician that maintained the radars, and before it gets thrown in, because it has been before, yes, I do know exactly how they work, because my essentially over 2 years of training entailed me having to learn the ins and outs of every part of the radar system that I worked on, from the
I love
transmitters to
how a
the
yes or no
aerials
answer
and back.
turns into a monologue.
Plain truth. How rude.
I asked a yes
No,
or no
he's a
question.
rude
I
little
didn't
fuck.
ask
He's
him.
been that way for months now.
I
You
was
asked
asking
a question
a
of a
monologue.
trained individual who gave you a good answer for it. The
I
correct
asked him a
response
yes or
is
no
thank
question.
you.
No, I asked him a yes or no question. And
You
Bob,
did not.
you were not using. Yeah, I said, have you ever measured anything? Bob, you
Yeah.
were using
And he answered
presupposition
that. And then
incorrectly.
he
I
gave
answered that in a night with a detailed answer
I didn't ask for a detailed answer.
before
You've
I
also
could get shot
asked a
down.
follow-up question about measuring the size of the airplane. That's two questions.
And I
Please go
think I
on mute for
answered.
a little bit and let him talk.
I think
Whoever
Bob,
said
you're
the
using presupposition incorrectly, Bob. That's not what's meant by presupposition.
yes,
Also, here's the
Bob,
other problem.
Bob,
We are talking
your
about
presupposition
distances.
about presuppositions is wrong.
Yeah, we're talking about distances, not sizes.
And radar is really good at distances.
Someone made the comment that Venus was measured by radar.
By radar, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the distance to Venus.
It's just never ending. It will never end because there's too many presuppositions, and that's how this
Actually,
whole model is worked.
Travis, it's John. Can I
Sorry,
speak
could
to
I just
Travis for a
finish?
second?
Could I just say
Yeah, sure.
one more thing? Actually, the surface of Venus, through its impenetrable atmosphere that we cannot see through, was mapped by radar from a satellite in orbit around Venus.
Huygens.
So, Travis,
Hi, John.
are you there? Provided you know the range to an object, you can work out its. You can observe its angular size, and from that you can calculate its actual size. There's no smoke and mirrors there. It's just you can do that with any object.
In fact, actually, you were saying that earlier. That exact same thing you were saying earlier.
What Travis was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's there's no witchcraft there. If you got the range and you observe the angular size,
Got the range.
you can.
What do you mean by range?
Well, they've got the distance to it from
Okay, I'm pretty
from
sure
radar.
I said that you would have to know the distance, so I'm pretty sure I affirmed that point. Yeah, what's your next point?
To measure the distance, you have to know the distance. Is that
No,
what
I'm
you
saying,
said?
No, I'm saying in order
Trav
to
said
make.
No, he's saying in
Explain
order to know he's saying in order to know the size of something, you need to know the distance to it. We know the distance to Venus because we've used radar to measure it, and therefore we can calculate its size.
I don't believe you can determine either. You can't determine the distance.
I
or
don't
the
care
size.
what you believe.
Wait.
We've done this.
Great.
Hold on.
Great.
How do you find fish underwater from the boat?
This is a red herring. Red
No, it's
herring.
not.
The fishing
No,
pole.
it's probably bad.
No,
I use
fish
my
aren't
fishing
herring.
pole to find where the fish are.
Literally a red herring.
That was actually very good. I think we should give him props for that. Be fair, because we need to lighten the tone of this a bit.
Travis, how do you find fish underwater from the top of the boat? What instrument is used?
You feel it in your soul.
I know, right? Come on, Travis. Nothing? No? You got nothing?
There's the Oxford or the Cambridge Dictionary definition of presupposition, something that you believe is true without having any proof. I believe my definition was correct.
That's not. I said that that's not the only use of presupposition, and you're not using it correctly. That's what I said.
You can't say it's not correct if correct
Are there
definition.
more than what are the other connotations, Bob? Can you go down the list, or is there only one entry?
There's more than one. He knows
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Even if there was more than one, you cannot say we are using it incorrectly if the use we are using is given there. It's not incorrect by definition then.
I will argue with anyone who says that faith is basing something that you believe without evidence. That's not what faith is, okay?
So Travis, you've spoken to a former radar technician about how we range the distance to Venus, and I've just explained to you that once we know the distance, we measure the angular size, and from that we can calculate the actual size. And you're just being
Can't
pig-headed.
verify that you're correct. That was the other
How
part
not?
of my answer. It
How not?
doesn't matter what you work out in your equation. You can't verify that you're correct.
That's your opinion, Travis.
Sure, they can verify it. It's
No,
called
it's not my
calibration.
opinion.
It's called
So
it's called calibrating the radar. So when you calibrate the radar to a known distance, and you observe this calibration, and you observe the distance, and you make sure that the distance that you
Robot Max.
Yeah, you are roboting
arranging
very badly.
at a longer.
I've got a quick question for Travis then.
Oh, please tell me. Is this Bob?
If I
Is this Bob?
calculate the radius of the Earth by 4 different ways, if I calibrate the radius of the Earth by 4 different means, and all of them agree within a standard deviation, or within a margin of error of each other, is that strong evidence that that is the correct radius?
In your model, sure.
And
he's talking about reality.
Okay, so let's take that a different way. If I've got a cube and I measure that cube once, I measure all the edges on that cube, and I take those measurements down and I write them down, and then I do it again, and I do it again. Then I find a better ruler, and I do it again, and I do it again. Then I actually find a laser range marker, and I do it again. Then I find I've got a large set of calipers that will actually do it, and I do it again. And all those measurements are really, really close together, plus or minus 1 or 2%. Maybe even closer than that. Would you say that I've got a reasonable idea of how big that cube is?
Are you able to handle that cube and touch it with your hands, or is this a mathematical representation?
Then how did he measure it with calipers?
I'm asking a question. I'm not trying to be a smartass. I'm asking you.
No,
a
you
question.
are being a smartass.
trying to be a
No, I'm
smartass.
not. No, I'm not actually. I'm asking a question. Are you?
You are,
Does
because
the
you
laser have
asked for everything to be in your hand.
Okay, my question then would be, do that on the Earth and show me that on the Earth. Go
Sure.
ahead.
So you want me to put the sun on the Earth?
Literally. He means
No,
literally.
you're a multi-drop driver, yeah? No,
Measure
one
the
second.
Earth.
Yeah. No, I'm
Measure
let
the
him go.
Earth.
Yeah. You're a multi-drop driver, aren't you?
Excuse me?
You're a multi-drop driver. You drive around and you drop stuff off in various places.
Delivery driver.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Try
No,
to get him again.
That's fine. So you have an odometer in your vehicle, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's normally going to be logged and catalogued by the business.
Wait a
as
minute.
part
Wait a
of-
minute. Are you proving the curvature of the Earth because I can drive miles? Wow. Wow. Thank you.
No, that's not. Thanks for trying to strawman me. I'm actually not.
Travis,
making
you're going to
that
be
point.
on mute so you can listen to a person's point and then you can answer, okay?
So all I'm trying to go with this is the fact that your business bases a lot of its finance on the measurements that your vehicle is taking. Now, you haven't physically measured that. You haven't physically done that yourself. That's just an automated function of the vehicle you're in. You have no control over that measurement whatsoever, apart from the fact you're just driving from A to C, B to C to D. Yeah. So we can use instrumentation to measure stuff, and we have confidence in the results. Why do you not have confidence in the results of accurate measuring instruments?
Because they're inconvenient and they shit all over my parade.
You'll need to unmute, Travis.
I said that I do believe that I have traveled 237 miles today. I do believe that.
Why?
Because my odometer reads 30 or 237 miles, and my speedometer tells me that I'm going 55 miles an hour.
Did you calibrate it?
Okay, do you really think that this is why I interrupted you and said, thank you for proving the curvature of the Earth, because if you are not saying anything other than the fact that I'm measuring distance, then your whole monologue is absolutely pointless.
No, because this is the way you do it. This is the way you do it. This is how you argue.
No, it's
Guys,
not.
hang on. Let's get back to Drus's point here. The point here is that you are using something that you cannot verify as a way of measuring.
Your tires are a little bit smaller in diameter, so you're definitely inaccurate.
But you
guys,
accept
okay, again, listen, the thing that you guys are failing to realize is measuring distance does not prove curvature.
That wasn't the point.
That wasn't the point.
That wasn't the point at all.
Yeah. Everybody else seems to be getting the point. I think even Manny could get this point.
The point is that we have tools that we can use to measure things.
Yeah, are you trying to be funny?
Including the
Okay,
odometer in your
okay,
car.
listen. The point that you,
I don't think I was trying, Manny.
right. The point that you are failing to realize is that my point to you was, you can handle the cube. You can correct your error because you have the physical object, right? Okay. So if I get into my Mini Cooper and I drive 237 miles, if I get into my Ford Bronco and drive 237 miles, and if I get into my my international 15 speed and drive 237 miles, I've driven 237 miles.
Actually, you're likely to end up in different places in all three vehicles.
I can guarantee that we'll end up in different places in all three vehicles at the same
I
mileage.
measured the radius by Al-Biruni. I measure the radius by measuring a distance between 2 degrees of latitude, and I do the measurement by a great circle course, and it all comes up to the same radius. You understand that's the radius. Very well.
Can I say something real quick? Travis, how did you measure how far you went?
I love
you claimed that you traveled a distance. How did you verify that?
I think that kills me is you radar range a mountain, radar range an airplane. Radar ranging always gives the right answer, and now you're calling into question whether radar ranging is working. Well, we verify it with light. You verify it with light.
So here, I got something that
answer. Then I triangulate it. It gives me the second.
To make it.
How the fuck do you come up with this is not an accurate method?
Yeah, and by his
Al, maybe you can explain this. I know. Am I roboting?
By his analogy, we'll just use 3 different types of radar and get the same reading. Problem solved.
Al. Am I roboting?
I also think that the I also think that the notion that we need to know the size to measure distance is completely laughable. See, we can figure it out very easily. Let's picture that you are in front of a wall and it's hazy, you have mist around you, so you cannot tell how far the wall goes. Does that necessarily mean that you don't know how far away from you it is? Like you could basically touch the wall with your hand and tell, okay, it's at arm's length, but I don't know the size, so I cannot know know the distance. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Oh, he left.
Oh, did we hurt his feelings?
I think I did. So I told him that every time he interrupts people who are trying to ask him a question with something irrelevant, that I would be muting him.
Don't mute people in here, please. That's not our fault.
See, I won't do that anymore. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't listen.
Yeah, no, I had to apologise profusely to Jose, and it's wrong, and I should not do it, and we should not do it, because that's what people like Nathan Oakley do, and we don't want to be like that.
Not exactly.
I will do it, and I will do it. In fact, Druss, you came very close the other night to being muted by me because you were
I probably
interrupting
deserved it.
somebody. Yeah, you were interrupting somebody, and I came very close to muting you.
I'm trying to be better.
Good boy.
We're not.
No, you're not.
We're talking about good point, like on Nathan. This is something where somebody is belligerent, and you're just putting the brakes on. They can unmute themselves. It's not like they've been cast away.
Yeah, I don't put up with someone making assertions that aren't true towards a statement made by somebody else that is just a statement. No one ever said that what we say here is facts or evidence. We are just...
Oh, somebody muted him. Sorry. Could I know this is. Could we just give Terry Davies a second to try a mic check, because I know he probably wants to do one. Assuming he can hear us at all.
No, Terry's upside down.
No, Terry not allowed.
I was going to say that one of the things that Manny was bringing up earlier was presupposition. That in philosophy, that is a horribly complicated word, and I kind of agree with some of the points that he was kind of making on it. But when it comes to what we can demonstrate and know and justify, pretty much everything in the world that we deal with is based on the presupposition we exist.
Oh dear, I exist. I'm presupposed.
Yeah, this is kind of like semantics, you know.
It's not semantics.
I think that we're the people presuppose or have to presuppose the distance to the objects that we are observing to then make an accurate, or what they're thinking it's an accurate distance to the sun.
Am I still a robot?
I don't think the sun is 93 million miles away, is what I'm saying. And the only
No, we didn't presuppose. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Max.
Okay, so I think you guys are forgetting something that's fairly important here about radar distancing something, and it's verifiable, and it's called calibration. And maybe Al can explain it, but when you calibrate something such as a radar, you're taking a known set distance that you know, and you're radar ranging that and calibrating it to know that distance. So what's so hard to understand about radar distance?
With the aircraft, sorry, I was going to say, with the aircraft search radar that I worked on, we did regular sort of 2 or 3 weekly calibration checks against a calibration aircraft, but we did daily calibration checks against a known airliner flying a known course. For us, it was actually the midday Oslo to Heathrow flight.
Been on that.
Yeah,
because you know what time. Sorry, Alan. You know what time it goes over.
Yeah.
What
we know what
height it's meant to be at.
Well, we know what height it is at because we can ask them.
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask them, and they can ping off you, and you can ping off them. But apparently, we can't ping a planet.
It's probably too small.
Oh, and for those in the UK, most of you will have heard of Fylingdales, yes? The early warning, distant early warning site. One of its jobs was to catalogue every piece of space junk in orbit, or in low Earth orbit, in the direction of the Soviet Union, so that they knew what was supposed to be there, so that when something new appeared, it would be
there
very
would be an
obvious.
international incident.
Well, they would sound the 4-minute warning, and we would shoot back.
Was that in the days where they actually gave the Prime Minister a 2p piece that he had to have on him all times in case he had to ring in from a telephone box?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm not kidding. This is
In
true.
case he had to toss a coin.
No. It was the fact that they always had a 2p piece in case he had to use a public telephone box to actually ring to say launch.
Yeah, it cost 2p to bring the launch codes in. If he wasn't in the office.
The other thing about the basic property of radar is that it's radio waves. It's light. So it works at the speed of light, which is a constant. And so
29.
it's very dependable in that sense. I was going to say that I think one of the big problems particularly with Travis, without having a scientific background. I mean, if I was talking to someone about some scientific concept or other, and they were trying to explain something to me, if you, and it's totally fair enough.
Testing.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Terry.
It's totally,
Sorry,
it's totally fair enough. It's totally fair enough to not to change the subject, but draw a valid parallel to further explain your point. And Travis consistently thinks that when people are doing that, they're drawing a very similar parallel of the same concept that you're changing the subject. And he thinks, maybe because of that, he thinks it's okay for himself to completely derail the conversation and actually change the subject entirely. I've noticed that with a lot of people. They just, you try to further the explanation by giving a different example of the same phenomenon, and they don't understand what you're doing.
I thought the odometer point was really, really good. I actually thought that was actually a valid and fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Did you agree with any of my points?
Silence, yes.
And if he did do 237 miles on the odometer in all three different vehicles, he would end up in three slightly different places in all three different vehicles.
Yep, I would agree with that too.
Yeah,
that's not even including all the other variables that go along with it. That's just going off of stock cars and everything else. That doesn't include the tire pressure or anything else.
Exactly. I think the U.S. government right now has like a 1.3% deviation on a speedometer is legal. That's what a manufacturer's tolerance has to be on it.
I did want to pull him up on a phrase that he made when he said, "I believe it to be accurate," or "I believe it to be true," or something. When I did want to butt in, and I said, "What, you know it is, or you believe it is?" There's a difference there.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's. I don't want to talk much more about that because he's not here, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay, one final point before I gotta go soon. So one final point.
No worries, man.
That I was talking about the transit, or you guys were talking about the transit of Venus. Okay, so did they and how? And I think that they presuppose the distance to Venus, and that's how they got the measurements, right?
No, you're presupposing.
I'm presupposing that.
You're
saying that I'm presupposing that. Well, hold on. Let me finish my point.
Let me finish.
You're saying John Watson, shut the fuck up. Let me finish, dude.
Don't tell me to shut the fuck up.
Go ahead.
You asked John a question and you wouldn't let him answer.
Go ahead. You didn't let me finish. Go ahead. Finish.
Right. The presupposition on your part is that we are making a presupposition. We've just been through this. Listen, we've just been through this. Alan Evans is a former radar technician, and we've been talking about how we can actually.
If you let me finish, I was going to bring
If you
that
let
up,
me
but you
finish,
don't let me finish. Go ahead.
If you let me finish, then you can talk once
go
I've
ahead,
finished.
John, the bitch ass Watson. Go ahead.
I've been called many things. That's a new one.
All right.
So we've got an accurate range to distance to Venus through radar in a very dependable way. We have the distance. If we have the distance, then we can work out the angular size, and we can work out the actual size of Venus.
Okay. Could I now? Are you done?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, in order to have the way that the people who say they got the distance to the sun and the measurements and the angular size and everything else, so it's because they first got the Venus, the distance to Venus, right, through radar.
Yeah.
Did that? Okay. Was that somebody in the background talking?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Right.
Okay. So, but that's one. That's one.
Yeah, that's one.
Okay. So they didn't have radar at the time of Captain Cook's, because he's the first, supposedly one of the first guys, if not the first, who measured, right, the distance to Venus, or
no,
not Captain Cook.
Who was it then? Who was it? Then?
Huygens, I think, if I remember rightly.
Yes,
Yes,
it was Huygens.
Admittedly, when they first used the transit of Venus to find,
I don't believe that, by the way. I'm just asking.
Fine, I don't care what you believe. That's immaterial to the historical fact that I think Huygens was the person that actually worked out the distance to Venus.
And what year was that? Was he?
I could be wrong about that fact. I'm going to
know you're wrong.
There
go
was, as I remember it, there was one assumption made initially with this, with using Venus, and that was they were pretty sure, but they didn't know. They were pretty sure that Venus was pretty much the same size and mass as the Earth, but they weren't 100% certain. But they went with that.
Again, because they're presupposing.
They
That's
had,
my point. It's all
but Manny, they had some very good reasons to suppose that it was. So using that
Which by
supposition,
definition means it's not a presupposition.
Yeah, change it to assumption.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, I think that I live in a stationary
Erebus,
Earth,
your
and a stationary Earth, and what the you know, if it has any boundaries, I don't think it does, but if it does, no, we don't know about it. I think there's more continents, and I think that what we observe in the sky is something that can be accurately measured.
Why?
It's just the way it was built. It's just the way it was built. Maybe some things can, but not everything.
Who built it?
But with that being
it
said,
defies the fact that we measure it. With radar, we actually bounce radar off of the sun.
Presupposing.
Well, why is it?
No. That's the opposite of presupposing.
Okay. Have you done it? Have you used the radar to measure?
I don't need to do everything.
That's what I'm saying.
Fallacy.
Most people haven't. They were just, going.
Yes, but you're assuming it's false without any verification.
They're just regurgitating whatever they read.
Did you build a car, Manny?
That's all I'm saying. I gotta go now.
Manny, have you built a car?
I'll talk to you guys on a different occasion. I have to go.
All right, bye, Manny. Nice drive-by. Thank you.
I wanted to ask
a requirement that somebody
Sorry,
personally
Eric.
do everything.
Just want to say, sorry, Erebus, we've had to mute you because you were bleeding through an awful lot of very distracting noise.
Yeah, Western.
I don't.
Sorry, we can't even understand you over it.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, go ahead.
Would I have been correct in if I'd have started using the analogy if he used a laser rangefinder like the domestic type for measuring distances, as in how lasers work?
Probably wouldn't go that far.
Although I would, I know they are usually called LiDAR. They are actually a type of radar because they're just really, 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 really high frequency radar.
Yeah.
And they're a domestic item we can use on Earth just for basic measurements for distances. So we can measure distances with a domestic type radar system.
Yeah,
and even a laser,
as they call it.
Well, I was thinking of more the laser rangefinders that you can just buy from your local hardware shop.
Yeah, well, that's a form of lidar because they're using light instead of radio. But that to me is actually just a semantic division because it's all the same electromagnetic spectrum. It's just where in the wave bands you are.
And what's interesting, if like let's say they had come up with they triangulated the sun first before radar, and if you came up with a wildly different number like 2 minutes for the return trip, then we'd have a problem.
For the return trip, yeah,
everything has confirmed.
I'm looking to the sun. You're looking at a 16-minute round trip. 16 to 18
if it didn't
minute
take
round
8
trip.
minutes, I'd be worried.
Yeah. If it took 8 minutes, if the round trip took 8 minutes, I'd be worried. We'd be half as close. But
then you have a problem with trigonometry not meeting with laser, and now you'd have a question as to which was right. But we don't have that problem.
No.
Coincidentally, they both match.
Yeah, this is the problem with the flat Earth. They hand wave away our mathematics and say that's not how you do maths, but they have no maths to back it up.
Using that radar type systems or whatever they use to measure the distance with the sun, does the sun's actual composition affect the radar at all?
I'm not 100% sure in whether they've actually. I think they have managed to get returns off the sun.
They have.
They have. It does require a special setup. I recommend going on George Nadiuk's channel. He's actually got a breakdown of what they did, the paper that they used, and all that.
I would say I haven't looked into it. I know it would be difficult. The radar ranging to the planets is not a problem.
Because they're more of a solid mass, or
because you don't.
Solid mass?
Well, yeah, they're the sorts of things that we regularly reflect radar signals off. So it's kind of a much more known factor.
I've got to correct myself. I was wrong. It was Cassini, not Huygens.
Hey guys.
Hey Bob.
I apologize. I'm going to probably pop on out of here, but the one thing I wanted to mention real quick is to do the distance to the sun via the transit of Venus. You don't need to know the size of Venus. You just need to be able to monitor the tracks across the disk of the sun and know how many astronomical units Venus is in its orbit.
Didn't they first use a parallax to Mars to measure the distance to the sun? Even doing the transit of Venus wasn't the first way. Yeah.
They did two of them. They did one overnight, and they did one from two different locations on the Earth. But to find the distance to the sun via the transit of Venus, all you have to do is you have to mark the track at one known location on Earth. Then you have to have a distant location, and you mark the track across the disk of the sun with that, and then you compare the distance between the two of them.
Yeah,
and that gives you the crossing of the line of sight. It's actually kind of an interesting thing to do.
Anyone who wants to have another go at sorry, go ahead, Alan.
I'm going to say that's why the distance to Venus is important, but it's also why simply having a good guess at it is going to give you fairly decent results, because the good guess at knowing how big and heavy Venus is tells you what orbit it should be in, given we know what the period of the orbit is.
No, actually, the thing that determines the period of the orbit is simply the distance of the orbit. It doesn't have anything to do with the mass of the planet.
The orbital speed of a balloon is the same as of a piece of concrete.
These guys always say stuff that makes me wish that I could learn math a bit better.
James Webb Telescope.
I suck at math, but
I suck at math. Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob.
I think what Alan was trying to say, Bob, is that utilizing the mass of the planet, you can come close to knowing the distance and the orbital mechanics of it.
Don't tell me they've delayed the James Webb again. Please don't tell me that.
No, it's on time. It's on time, but
Okay.
we will be able to see other planets in other galaxies with the damn thing.
Oh, we CGI fake. It's not there. The space isn't real. The dome.
What, in a galaxy far, far away?
Or we'll get.
Damn, Bob was
I
gonna tell him if
believe
he
that
wanted
there
to.
are other.
Sorry for addressing it.
No. You go on because I've been speaking loads and you haven't.
No, that's fine. I was going to tell Bob if he was still here that if he wanted to go kick Montreal and Travis around the roundabout again over gyro compasses and compasses, that's what they're talking about.
So supermodels can't be real because I can't touch them either, right?
Yep.
Is that your excuse?
I was actually going to do a demonstration of ground penetrating radar and pipes in the ground, just for Travis, just to show that you could have something in the ground, use a radar to find it and dig it up to show him the depth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although
And look, there it
goodbye
is.
because- Go ahead.
See if he's online.
Guys, do you want to do something fun? Because currently Travis has migrated over to the Sean G show.
What
do you have in mind?
What did you have in mind of fun?
I just thought we could pop over and see how he's doing. Poor lad, probably missed us.
Yeah, he's over on Sean. I may have to take off. So,
Can we call him out?
Hello again, Travis.
I'll go and pick on Sean.
Spurs is mad at me at the moment. Again.
What did you do?
He wants me to demonstrate the fact that with altitude changes, I have to spin the supercharger or turbocharger on my race car harder.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Crashes?
I asked him why, when we change altitude with racetracks, why do I have to spin my turbocharger or supercharger faster to maintain the same boost pressure?
I'll tell you something. I'll make a bet on air. Spurs, I bet you wouldn't call either myself or Crash a liar to our fucking faces.
But he didn't even understand the air fuel mixture on a standard carburetor, even for higher altitude stuff.
I'm a bit pissed off. He accused me of being a liar. He accused Crash of being a liar, and he accused Toady of, and especially Toady. Fucking hell,
Yeah.
Guy's a bloody angel, for fuck's sake.
Who wants to see some old popular mechanics books I just found?
Is that old porn books?
But yeah, he wants me to actually demonstrate. I told him if he paid for fuel, I'd do it, but I don't think he realizes how much fuel that car will eat.
Is it miles to the gallon or gallons to the mile?
It's gallons per 4 miles.
25 cents. Here's one for you, Crashes. Look at that. Ooh.
Might learn something.
1962.
Now, does that have the helicopter you can build yourself in the back?
I don't know. I think the police helicopter is buzzing around outside. Can't think why anybody else would be whizzing round and round.
Trying to find one that
They're not
has flat
still
Earth.
made, are they? They're not still made, those mechanics, are they?
Yeah, they still make popular mechanics.
Really?
Yeah, you can still get them.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, we just get workshop manuals.
I think I'm going to pop over to Sean G's and fuck with some people. I'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah, I may do the same.
Have fun.
I still have some questions for Travis.
Well,
Yeah, tell him he's a liar for me.
Will do.
If everybody's going to be disappearing over there, we could all go mob-handed over there, I suppose.
Sounds like a plan.
And
Yeah.
call
I'm
it
still awake,
and
you
call
know,
it a
Alan.
day here. I know you are, Terry. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's like 5 a.m.
The missus just came to me and said, "You going to bed?" And I said, "No, I'm still awake."
That is. That is indeed some good.
I think I figured out what my issue was with Google Meets.
What's that?
Well, one, I had to update Google Chrome's settings for Windows 10, like an update for it. The other, I disconnected Voice Meter and set the default, or not set the default, but use the microphone and speakers, and seems to be working fine now.
Yeah. So, it seems the consensus is to head on over to.
Well, you're getting flies dropping like whatever at the moment.
G's. So
you're down to
we've
6.
We've still got a fair number of people watching, but that's also dropping quite quickly. So, yeah, I think I think I shall say good night to everybody out there in YouTube land. Thank you for coming and watching. It's been a pleasure hosting you all. I think it probably is a good idea to disappear over to Jose's. No, sorry, not Jose's. Sean G's. He's usually good for a good stream as well. So thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you, Alan.
Good night, Alan.